World War III astrology. What do the stars and the cosmic cycles say about when it could happen? Watch this video to find out. All right, so this is a video on a very serious topic, and it's on a topic that many of us, myself included, wouldn't even have thought possible until very recently. Because we collectively didn't believe that a world war was even possible. Remember, basically all the way up until COVID, roughly, until 2020, and maybe a little bit afterward, people still thought that world wars were a thing of the past. That, the 20th century did these crazy things and had these great horrific massacres and all of that, but we were not really believing or considering even the possibility of this happening at that scale, happening in our own century, in the 21st century. Alas, times have changed, and now World War III is not only a possibility, but it's actually so strongly considered, and it so strongly appears in the public imagination, in the collective consciousness, that you have everywhere you look, you have people talking about it, you have people preparing for it, people are preparing with survival kits that they're buying, with energy and food rations, and pundits are talking about when it could happen, what you should do to your assets to keep them safe. And it's becoming more and more, day by day, it's almost like we're collectively conjuring it up, and it's more and more becoming a real probability. In fact, a very likely probability at this point. Now, the astrology obviously gives us signs, clear signs that we can read on when this cataclysmic event, this kind of large-scale mass destruction of clash of, vast kind of power blocks globally, when this could happen. And in this video, I'm going to reveal some pointers, not the full picture. Obviously, this is hugely complex, and there are so many different things to look at. But I will give you some pointers that are quite indicative and quite strong. They tell a pretty strong story. A story that, we should take into account and we should prepare for. But before I do so, I want to say a couple of words on why this is happening and why we find ourselves in this predicament. Now, if you want to go straight up to the astrology, you can skip forward. The chapters are going to be in the description below. So there are two reasons for why we find ourselves in this predicament. The first reason is the geopolitical shift that's occurring, and through which we are moving from a system and a phase in world history where we had the dominant and superior power of the United States as the guarantor of order in the world, towards a new, a gradually but surely emerging order where this dominant power is going to be China. So this shift is simply an objective fact of reality. You just need to look at the economic statistics and of productivity and of interconnectivity in the world financial systems and many other factors. Actually, there's a great book by Ray Dalio, the investor and private equity guru, who has a great understanding not just of China, but especially also of human nature and of historical principles. And he looked at these factors in great detail. So the fact that we're moving from this order, from the US-dominated order, to a new order, which is still on the horizon, which hasn't yet fully come, but which is already clear that it's going to come, and which China is going to be, the ordering principle of the world economy and of the world system. This means that in the interregnum, in the interim, in between, in the in-between phase, there's going to be a phase of chaos and confusion and, simply a phase where there isn't a clear world policeman. There isn't a clear, order, a clear power that could maintain order on the global scale. And this has been historically the same when you look at the shift between different empires in history. And the second reason is that apart from the geopolitical situation, we also have certain spiritual and metaphysical reasons for what's happening right now. And these spiritual reasons, in my mind, they're even more important. And what are they? Well, if you know about the world's wisdom traditions, any of the major and true religious revelations, they speak of a coming of an apocalyptic time, of a Kali Yuga, as it's called in the Indian traditions, or the end times, as it's described in the book of Revelation in the Bible, where it's very clear and it's very clearly said that as we get closer to the end times, we're going to see a great moral depravity. And you will agree with me that this is the case if you now look at the revelations that we have seen in recent times with Epstein and his island, and everywhere across the board. If you just think about the music industry, what has just been revealed with Diddy and others, and these are just, there's so many examples of, if you just look at society, what's being done right now, to children. I don't want to go too much into the details here. You can put the pieces together for yourself. We are living in a times where really moral depravity is on the rise and is reaching hitherto unseen levels. And this is part of the spiritual reason for why greater calamities are going to be possible and in fact probable in our times as we near the apocalypse. So it needs to get much worse before the Messiah can come, before Jesus Christ can return. So these are the reasons in my mind for why what is happening now is happening. But this video is mainly about reading the cycles, really reading the astrological cycles to understand and to have a hint for when it's going to happen. So let's do that together. Let's look at the cycles. All right, so the first thing that I want to look at is simply, the general nature of the quality of time in the coming years. So the time that we're in right now and the coming years from now. Let me just switch this here. I don't need to see the outer planets. No, the other way around. I don't need to see the inner planets. We're fine with the outer planets for this purpose. And so this is where we are right now in 24. We're just going towards this, Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, which is this kind of great exuberance and enthusiasm in all the markets, the stock markets and the crypto and everything. But this will pass, right? This is a momentary kind of exuberance. It will pass. And then the next big thing that we're going towards in global cycles is, there's on one hand, there is this trine of Pluto and Uranus, which is quite important, actually. It means, this is going to bring fast changes to the world system. So, this means in 24, we're going to see rapid changes to the global system. What I was just talking before with regards to geopolitical shifts, you can bet on, for instance, BRICS taking on lots of new members. 30 new members in 24 is not going to be, out of the possible. And the world economic system could shift pretty quickly. We could see some new, alternatives to the dollar, gold, to the dollar standard, not necessarily a reintroduction of gold, but alternative systems, based on the yuan, based on trading pairs in between countries using their own currencies, based on any type of introductions that the BRICS bank, the new BRICS bank in Shanghai is going to do, and similar introductions and developments that will see the world economic system and the world system as such shift very rapidly towards its new configuration, right? So this is what's happening in 24. And then, well, this on itself, for itself, is not necessarily very worrying. It's part of the necessary shift. But then what we have coming up is this conjunction here of Neptune and Saturn in 25. We're actually already, we're already in the early stages of it, if you take the very wide conjunction. But this is when it's going to be exact. In 25, it's really getting into aspect. It's getting super close. And then, right, and then we have this, it's in aspect, in Aries. They get together in Aries. They first get close to each other in Pisces, right? So this is going to be a marker of inflation rising massively globally again, and global borders, breakdown of borders, and a mass migration and mass employment, mass unemployment, obviously unemployment, right, in 25, which is this marker that you can see here, right? And then you have this continuing, and then we have the conjunction in Aries, right? And this, ladies and gentlemen, is dangerous. Why is this dangerous? Saturn and Neptune in Aries. Let me explain. So what do we have here? This is quite historical. It's quite important, right? It's an important thing that's happening. So we have here, first of all, well, we have Saturn-Neptune conjunctions and oppositions and so on, obviously quite regularly, every 30-something years. The cycle comes together, they were together, they were actually importantly configured in World War I and in World War II as well. But on its own, it doesn't mean that, okay, just because they're together, no. But what's so special here? Well, they're in Aries, and they're in the first degree of Aries. The first degree of Aries is super important because it's where we have the Aries Ingress. The Aries Ingress is where the annual horoscope of the year, the annual birth chart of the year happens, and which sets the tone for the entire year, for the entire globe, right? So this is extremely significant. And this is quite historical. You would have to go back hundreds of years to find a constellation where you have an important conjunction like this on the first degree of Aries. Okay, now what does it mean? We have Saturn and Neptune, right, and in Aries. So this is about spiritual or ideological warfare. Aries is war, right? And Saturn is structures and in the global scene, leadership structures, government structures, right? Neptune is ideology in mundane, right? So we have the coming together, and then Aries is renewal and overthrowing and initiating and war. So we have spiritual or ideological warfare. Neptune is also confusion. So we also have great confusion about leaders, about global leaders. The leaders of the world will be confused, and they will be confused about each other and about each other's power, while at the same time we will see this movement toward warfare based on ideological principles. So put these things together, and this is not looking like a very savory mix for what's coming and what's in store for us. And for how long is this going to be? Let's see. So it's there, and then we move, goes out, comes back in again. See, comes back in again. And I went too far. In 26, let's see, let's go back to 26, right? Here, 26, comes back in again, right? 26, 26, and then they move on, and then move on, and they're still here in 27, still in conjunction, still actually pretty close to the Aries ingress in 27. And then they gradually move out, right? They gradually move out, and then you have, moving towards the next configuration already with Pluto, Saturn, square. That's brewing, that's building up here. It's going to be, I think, in 28. It's going to be in aspect. Yeah, in 28 here, it's an aspect, right? This is some of the kind of system clashes, and this is big system clashes. So Saturn, Pluto, we had at September 11th, for instance, was exact. And okay, so we've got some indication now. The years 25, 26, 27, 20, especially 26, 27, they look pretty dangerous. So if we want to see what this means specifically, we got to look at the Aries ingress chart. Aries ingress chart is super important. In mundane astrology, it's the chart that's made for the moment that Aries, that Sun enters into Aries. It's actually right now when I'm recording this. And it's also the Persian New Year, which falls on this moment. And this chart shows you, when you craft it, when you cast it for a specific location, it shows you what you're dealing with in that location, politically speaking. So 26, and let's see, we have here the charts of oh wait, I need to bring back all the planets, right? We need to see all the planets again. So we have this here, the 26 Aries ingress for Paris, France. And the one for Brussels, which is the capital of Europe, is going to be very similar, right? It falls here in the 8th house. You see the 8th house with all this Mars here in the 7th. So the 8th and the 7th is, right, is the others. The 7th is the open enemy, the partner or the enemy. The 8th house is the transformation or the confrontation with the others, with their resources, with their stuff, clashing with them. It falls in here. Everything falls in here, you see, in the Aries ingress. Everything falls in the 7 and 8. So this is a time when the Europeans, right, and you got a similar chart here for the Aries ingress in Berlin, right? Very similar one. And this Berlin is actually even closer to the 7th. Everything is in 7 here. Yeah, you see the sun is in 7. So everything is in 7 and 8, right? So the Europeans, they're going to have all this what I said before, the ideological warfare, right? The confusion about the leaders, the clashes with the leaders to overthrow systems of leadership. Yeah, all of this is going to happen here on 7 and 8 with basically facing the opponent, right? And when? In 26, starting 26, going into 27. Okay, so what about their adversary? What about Moscow? So we look at Moscow, Russia, the Russian chart. The Russians, you see, the Russians have here this conjunction in 7, right? Exactly same thing, even more so, directly looking at the open confrontation. Okay, so this is the Aries ingress. But normally we need a couple of hits. We need a couple of confirmations from, in order to see and be able to say something. One hit is never enough in astrology. One hit is never enough. Ideally, you need 3. You have 3, and you look at transits and progressions and so on, then you're on to something. So if this is something, then we should be able to see something in other charts. Okay. Which charts am I going to look at? Let's look at the chart of the Russian Federation, the Russians. Okay, this is Russia. Russia, they have here their Saturn in 7. Okay, so this means hard lessons through partnerships, but also through open enemies, right? This is their natal configuration for the Russian chart, for the Russian Federation. And now, what's happening with Russia going into the coming time? They already have Pluto here on the descendant right now, right? So right now they're already starting to obviously 24, they're already starting to be confronted with an overwhelmingly powerful enemy, right? Russia is already now feeling the direct confrontation with an overwhelmingly strong enemy, right? They're kind of facing down all of NATO right now, which is obviously an overwhelmingly strong enemy, right? They're facing down all of NATO right now. And this continues, and in 24, right? This is not Ukraine, this is NATO, right? It's not just Ukraine. If it was just Ukraine, it wouldn't be the Pluto here on the descendant, right? And then this continues, and it continues, and then this Pluto just hovers on the descendant, and then it hits Saturn. See here? It hits their Saturn for the first time exactly here, March 26th. And this is what? Transiting Pluto on Saturn in 7. This is basically involvement in an intense and deeply transformative power struggle with an open enemy. That's the marker that I'm reading here, right? Pluto transiting Pluto on Saturn in 7. When? It's 27. Okay, 27, and then it goes on. It goes on, right? It goes on, it stays there. It goes on, let me show you this. It goes on, yeah, it comes back, goes on, it goes back again, 27, 26 to 27. It's a long-term thing, right? Pluto, the third hit is by 27, August 27. So here, the second hit is here in February 27. The third hit is August 27. So by August 27, this thing should be kind of reaching its culmination, right? It should be reaching a sort of apex or conclusion, right? Or at least, right, it should be ready to be processed and then go into the next stage, whatever the stage may be. As a fourth hit here. November 27 is a fourth hit here. So these years are looking very intense from an astrological perspective if we're looking to understand if there could be a possibility of war, right? Okay, so this is Russia. What about Vladimir Putin? So Putin, if you look at him, he just won the elections with, overwhelming majority. So he's going to be in power at that time, for sure, right? And if you look at his chart, he's got Pluto on his MC, right? His public role and his mission and his role in the cosmic theater that we're watching is to be Pluto, right? Is to be like this extremely powerful figure who brings about a grand transformation and a confrontation with dark and plutonic forces on a global scale, right? That's his role, right? That's what he's born for. Now Putin, if we look at the transits, he's got Jupiter, he's got some very empowering time coming up in 25, right? In April 25, in 25, the whole of 25, Jupiter is going to make a trine for his planets here. He's going to be super, happy and successful and take over. Probably he's going to, at this time, already have completely taken over Ukraine. And then it will continue by, he will be quite happy with having lots of new members in BRICS, right? And then, being at the peak of his power, really, and this continues, the peak of his power is here, it's 26, right? When you got Jupiter on his Pluto, right? So exactly in that time when we're looking at the potential confrontation, Putin is going to be extremely emboldened. He's going to have had a year or two of successes behind him, and he will be bold. He will be bold to make moves, right? And powerful and big moves with Jupiter on his Pluto, right? Like big expansionistic and even daring, risk-taking and big moves that he'll be able to make in that time, right? Which doesn't bode well necessarily for the prospects for peace in that time frame. Now, if you look at his progressions, this is his progressions. It looks a little bit confusing. You got inside the chart, you got the transits. In the middle, you've got the secondary progressions. Outside, you got the transits. So the progressions, if you look at the progressions, this is quite telling. You've got, for Putin, you've got the Mars here. You see the Mars down here? It's moving in the progressions. It's moving. 25, 26, 20, 26. It's your 27. 27, this is a once in a lifetime constellation. His progressed Mars is going to be opposite Pluto. Opposite Pluto. Progressed Mars, opposite Pluto, exact. And it's going to be exact in 27, and then in 28, let's see, 28, it's going to be exact with his natal, 28, actually 29, let me see, when is this actually? When is this? 28, yeah? It starts in 28, it's in 28. May 28, it's going to be exact. So what is this? This is a karmic battle of epic proportions, yeah, which he is going to be in, and which is going to be for life and death. A karmic battle of epic proportions for life and death for Vladimir Putin around 28. Okay, so now you just need to put the puzzle pieces together, my friends. I'm giving you the puzzle pieces, you put them together. Now, European Union, let's look at the European Union as well, just to see confirmation for this, just to see confirmation. Okay, so let's go into the European Union chart, and the European Union, we've got in these coming years, we've got on the one hand, we've got, well, okay, here, this is significant. 26 transits, okay, I'm not still seeing big activation. 27, going into 27, you got something very important happening here. You've got here, on the one hand, you've got Uranus opposite Mars. Okay, Uranus opposite Mars. Transiting Uranus opposite, exact opposition to Mars. What is this? Uranus-Mars stands for explosions. Explosions, rockets, bombs, those kind of things, right? So, and hitting what? Hitting territory. Hitting it's an opposition. It comes from outside. It's you experience the opposition through something that opposes you, another force that opposes you, and that brings explosions, rockets, bombs, and so on and so forth into your experience, into your field of experience. But simultaneously, you've got here the Mars, Pluto. Pluto is actually sextile to Mars, so the Europeans are going to put up a very decent fight in this, right? So with Pluto having a positive aspect to Mars, this bodes very well for the fighting abilities of the Europeans, even though it doesn't look like that right now, when they are not even able to provide ammunition in sufficient amounts to the country that they're propping up there, the ally Ukraine. So this is what we're seeing here. And now, what does that mean for the US? I didn't talk about the USA at this point. Now, there's a reason for that. I've done another analysis of the US coming elections, which I'll link below, where I'm talking about that a little bit. I'm going to do more videos on this actually specifically. And the reason for this is that in the US chart, what we're seeing is a quite notable thing. I must have the Aries Ingress here as well. Yeah, we do. Here, the Aries Ingress for Washington, D.C. 26. Because you're going to ask yourself, if Europeans and Russians are, going at it in that time frame, what's the U.S. doing? And this Aries Ingress here, this very difficult constellation, challenging constellation, in the U.S. chart, it falls in the 10th zone, right? Which is about the statehood, which is about the government, the statehood itself, right? And what does that mean for the U.S.? And why, does that contribute to the fact that I didn't say much about the U.S. involvement? So in the U.S. chart, this difficult constellation, the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in the first degree of Aries, it actually falls on the IC of the US chart. So this is the foundations of US statehood, right? This is the foundations, the constitution, the inner kind of the demographics, the people, the foundation of what the state is built on. And you're going to have this confusion and delusion and ideological warfare, overthrowing of ideological systems, ideological warfare combined with confusion about the state and its statehood, affecting the foundations of the US state. What does that mean? What does that mean? How do you interpret that? When? When is this happening? It's happening in 25, right? It's starting in 25, and then it's continuing into right? It's going out of aspect, it's coming back into aspect, exact aspect in 26, right? In 26, it's an exact aspect. So if you ask me, this looks like a marker for extreme inner unrest, if not to say civil war. So in the best case, the forces of reason will prevail and it will be avoided to have to go through a civil war. But even if a civil war is avoided, there will be immense unrest and upheavals internally throughout this period, which leads me to say that in 25 and 26, it is likely that the US will not be able or will not be in a position to enter or to support allies overseas. Now you're going to ask yourself, what about afterwards? What about late 27, 28, and 28 specifically, where we saw the confrontation, the kind of epic karmic battle in Putin's chart specifically, but also with the other markers that I showed you in the European and Russian charts respectively. Will at that time the US be in a position to intervene? What's going to happen in the Chinese theater? Is China going to take Taiwan around this time? Is the US potentially going to be pulled into a confrontation in East Asia even before it's pulled into a confrontation in Europe? Those are all questions that deserve their own video, that deserve their own analysis. As I said before, this is a vastly complex topic. We cannot hope to unlock and decode all of the signs in one session. So if you want to know more, if you want to get more puzzle pieces, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Also put into the comments for me what specifically you want to see next. What is on your mind? There's other large conflict scenarios. Think about Iran and Israel in the Middle East. There's other smaller conflict, places of conflict and brewing conflicts. Think about South America with Venezuela just starting to expand territorially, obviously in Africa with various ongoing crises. And all of these really need to be analyzed. There's also another viewpoint that you may have if you're thinking about your own family and your own assets perhaps being safe, then which zone, which country is going to be able to provide that safety or that haven? Those are other questions that we can illuminate with astrology. So, all in all, we are going into difficult times, my friends. And the astrology can help us. The analysis of the archetypal cycles of the cosmological cycles and their correspondences in human affairs, it can help us to have some sense of clarity and direction and to understand the bigger picture. But at the end of the day, and the scriptures have been clear, and the revelations have been clear, and the mystics of all times have been clear on this. At the end of the day, what's going to save you and your family in these times that we're going through and that we're entering gradually is going to be your faith in God. And it's going to be your lived reality of being faithful in the goodness that awaits you if and when we get through these calamities together. So with that, I'm going to leave you and to let you ponder and hope to hear from you and to start a convo in the comments below. And until the next time I remain Dr. V, all the best to you.